Making movies isn't an easy endeavor. The amount of time that it takes a film to be made from start to finish is many years, so it's easy to see why a few mistakes may end up slipping through the cracks. Sometimes these mistakes can be fixed thanks to modern digital effects, whether it's changing a line of dialogue, color correcting something, or adding a bit of CGI to fix a particular shot. But sometimes the errors simply can't be fixed, despite how awesome today's digital effects are. While we love every film on this list, we still thought it'd be interesting to highlight some of these unique errors. Intrigued by the topic? Why not give the video a like and subscribe to the channel? And before we get started, can you guess the hit blockbuster film based off of these emojis? Stay tuned for the answer. Fate of the Furious. Fate of the Furious was a monster hit for the car-obsessed franchise, dethroning Star Wars The Force Awakens' opening weekend record. The film was just as ludicrous as the previous entries, with the team taking on a nuclear submarine in the final act, and the film's antagonist, the computer hacker Cypher, remotely controlling hundreds of cars on the streets of New York. You may have to suspend all logic at some points in this really fun film, but that doesn't mean the filmmakers should have suspended their franchise's continuity. Early on in the film, Dwayne Johnson's Hobbs is imprisoned and conveniently ends up sharing a cell adjacent to Jason Statham's Deckard Shaw, the antagonist from the seventh film. The two men proceed to enter a battle of words, tossing insults left, right, and center at each other. One such taunt came from Shaw when he stated that he threw Hobbs out of a window in the previous film, an action that ultimately landed Hobbs in the hospital for most of the movie. There's only one problem though, Shaw didn't throw Hobbs out of a window. If you go back and watch Furious 7, it was actually a concussive grenade that launched Johnson's character out the window and onto a parked car below. It's an honest slip-up, or perhaps Shaw was trying to sound tougher than he actually was in the moment. But there's no doubt that Shaw definitely didn't physically toss Luke Hobbs out the window. Perhaps next time, although with word of a Hobbs and Shaw spin-off, even that might not happen.
Who are you?
You know who I am.
Rogue One: A Star Wars Story. Rogue One was the first live-action spin-off for the Star Wars galaxy and offered insight into how the Rebel Alliance ended up stealing the Death Star plans. The film was a huge hit, giving fans something that was a little different from the conventional saga films, opting for a gritty war story as opposed to a comic adventure. Despite being beautifully shot and fixing a long-time plot hole many Star Wars fans had with the Death Star, the film actually has a glaring mistake that no CGI could fix.
Am I fire when ready?
The error comes towards the start of the final battle, right before when the Rebel fleet departed Yavin 4 to engage the Empire. We see Bail Organa telling Mon Mothma that he'll send someone he trusts to find Obi-Wan Kenobi and instructs Captain Antilles to prepare his ship. That ship is none other than the Tantive 4, the vessel that Vader boards at the beginning of A New Hope. But if the ship is departed, then how are R2-D2 and C-3PO still on Yavin 4 talking about going to Scarif? We know that they are on the Tantive 4 for the events of A New Hope, and the Tantive 4 wasn't at Scarif. We know the crew wanted to sneak in a little fun Easter egg here, but it definitely interfered with the canon of the franchise. Perhaps we could have seen them on the Tantive 4 later on. Pirates of the Caribbean: Dead Man's Chest. Before Jack Sparrow sails back into theaters in May 2017, we thought we'd go and look back at the second film in the classic pirate franchise. The films may be classics in the hearts of many seafaring fans, but there are a few mistakes in the films that would make even a few pirates scratch their heads if they saw the film. One such error is so in your face you probably never knew about it unless you paid attention in historic class. Thanks to being able to see the orders Beckett gives Norrington and Will in the film, we learn that George I was the current King of England thanks to the signature of George R at the bottom of the scroll. That helps us place the events of the film in the early 1700s, as George was the ruling monarch from 1714 to 1727. But Port Royal, the town where Elizabeth Swann and Will Turner were from, was completely destroyed by an earthquake in 1692. During the time of reconstruction of the Jamaican town, the British capital in the Caribbean was moved to Spanish Town, and Port Royal was further devastated by a hurricane in 1722 and a large fire in 1703, making the Port Royal we've come to love in the film nothing more than a fantasy, as it was largely abandoned after the disasters. We guess someone forgot to fact-check the history of the land in pre-production. Next time you watch the films, you can thank us for pointing out this glaring mistake in what is otherwise a really fun film. Just don't use it as a primary source for any history papers. Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them. Fantastic Beasts was the first of 5 Harry Potter sequels, set in the early 20th century and giving us some brief setup to what will surely be a story arc very focused on events pertaining to both a younger Albus Dumbledore and the dark wizard Grindelwald. The film was a hit for fans, offering lots of magical moments, new creatures, and a much darker and mature story than what we're used to in the wizarding world. But even with J.K. Rowling penning the screenplay for the film, there are a few mistakes that even computer magic couldn't put right. Early in the film, Newt Scamander arrives from England to 1926 Manhattan Island, arriving by boat. Much like taking a plane, people visiting from other nations had to present their passport upon entry to a new country. When Newt hands his over, though, something odd happens considering the time period that the movie is set in. That being, the customs office tiled the passport on its side to verify the picture. While this may not seem strange at first, British passports didn't need to be reoriented in the 1920s. It's a minor mistake, but one that just can't be fixed. No matter though, as fans can expect to return to the wizarding world in Fantastic Beasts 2 in 2018, which will take the action back to Europe, so hopefully there'll be no custom officers. Jurassic World. Jurassic World was a monstrous hit when it was unleashed back in 2015. The combination of the star power of Chris Pratt and the high dose of nostalgia made this an instant hit for fans of the original 1993 film. Unlike that film though, Jurassic World decided to make just about every dinosaur in the film a CGI creation, which didn't quite sit well with many fans. But it wasn't just the dinosaurs that were given the digital treatment. The same went for some props. During the scene where Owen and Claire were hiding next to the Jeep from the Indominus Rex, we see that Owen left his tranquilizer rifle exposed and out of reach when the Rex came a-sniffing. That rifle was actually a CGI prop though. Perhaps that's why there was a continuity error in this scene. When the Indominus Rex is searching for the pair, she knocks the Jeep trying to peek around the corner. With the Jeep being pushed a bit, the rifle would naturally fall down, but when Owen reaches over to retrieve it, the rifle has magically remained in place. Whoa! I suppose you can say that's one grounded prop. The animators likely just forgot about moving the digital effect after the fact, but something like this would have been easier to fix if they opted for a practical effect instead. So even when a digital effect is used, the shot still may not be able to be tweaked on time. Thankfully, Jurassic World 2, due out in 2018, has promised to utilize more practical effects this time around, and that goes twofold for the dinosaurs. Furious 7. The 7th entry in the Fast and Furious franchise was the final goodbye for Paul Walker, and was one heck of an action thrill ride that Walker would have been proud of. From cars falling out of airplanes to cars flying from building to building, this was the most insane Furious film to date in terms of its stunt work. Despite the level of CGI put into many of these scenes, there's actually a movie mistake present that consists of a practical object. We are of course referring to the hilarious moment when Dwayne Johnson's Hobbs breaks out of his cast and goes to work. There's only one problem though. There was only one cast. When Elena was explaining Hobbs' injuries to Dom, she states that Hobbs broke his leg in 2 places. Yet when it came time to break out of the cast, there was no cast on his leg, nor did Hobbs have any form of limp. We know that the Furious saga likes to play fast and loose with the rules of physics and logic, but there's just no way to fix this glaring mistake. Not unless Hobbs secretly has Wolverine's healing power and his legs were the first to be healed. You know, that might actually end up explaining a whole lot. Well, regardless, it's an error that the filmmakers likely forgot to put in, as they didn't want to have Hobbs held back in any way when it came time for the finale.
If I wanted it, you'd be dead already.
Batman v Superman. Batman v Superman was certainly a polarizing movie experience for many. There seemed to be 2 sides of the argument. Love and hate for both sides were very vocal about their thoughts on the movie. What they should have been focusing their energy on was some of the mistakes that were found in the movie. Every movie has mistakes, it's just the way of the world. But BVS certainly had some errors that made us scratch our head and wonder how come no one thought to redo the shot to fix it. One such mistake in the film came during the titular showdown between the Bat of Gotham and the last son of Krypton. In order to give himself an edge, Batman tosses a smoke grenade in order to get the upper hand on Supes and hit him with a Kryptonian grenade. There's just one huge problem here that has us wondering if the filmmakers knew Superman at all. He has X-ray vision, so even with the smoke clouding his vision, Superman should have been able to see through the smoke and not let Batman get into a better position. It's a curious and weird error, but how else was the Man of Steel supposed to get a cloud of kryptonite in his face to weaken him? Let us know in the comments below what you think Batman could have done better in this situation, and stay tuned for Wonder Woman's theatrical release coming June 2nd, 2017.
I could do this all day.
Captain America: Civil War. The Captain America films have gotten better and better over the years, culminating in the fan-favorite film Civil War, which came out in cinemas in 2016. Essentially Avengers 2.5, Civil War saw the team get fractured and divided, with Cap and his team going underground by the film's end, and Tony Stark working with a wounded War Machine in an unstable Vision. It set up the playing field nicely for the Infinity War, as they'll go into that battle a broken house, which should increase the stakes for our heroes. Before we get to that highly anticipated battle in 2018, though, we have to address an error that the filmmakers made during the production of the film. The Russo brothers, the directors of the film, have gone on record stating that they wanted to make sure their movies were honest trailer-proof. Yet there were still a few mistakes that made their way into the final product. One such error was the idea of the Sokovia Accords, which would force superheroes to register their identities to the government. Only the Accords were signed in Vienna, therefore by international law, the Accords should actually be called the Vienna Accords, as they are always named after the place where they were signed, not about the event that they are pertaining. Once you know this fact, you'll be hard-pressed to ever forget it.
My people will be getting in touch with you very soon. I guarantee it.
Kingsman: The Secret Service. Kingsman was the surprise hit of 2014, offering up a comic book adaptation that felt very different from the Marvel and DC movies. Heavily inspired by the James Bond films, Kingsman offered a complete package of humor, likable characters, crazy action, and loads of style, so much so that we can't wait for the sequel to come out later this year. That being said, even these spies dropped the ball just a few times. Thankfully, they still managed to save the world from Samuel L. Jackson's nefarious plan. That plan began to catch the attention of the Kingsmen when Jackson's Valentine made a press conference. This is where Merlin and Harry notice that there are scars on various members of Valentine's entourage, which they quickly deduce as being where the implant chips were surgically embedded into the person. Merlin later exploits this knowledge by hacking the frequency and making all of the chips activate their failsafe, resulting in one colorful montage of mayhem. There's only one problem, however. Valentine's #1 henchwoman Gazelle had such a scar, yet when the implants were activated she remained unharmed from the blasts. Perhaps she had a special version of the chip that had a better firewall. But if that was the case, how come Valentine didn't just install that version on his whole security team? It's a glaring error, but we can forgive it as we got to see the awesome fight sequence between Gazelle and Eggsy by the end. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. Spoiler alert. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 was a massive hit for Marvel, earning $145 million over its opening weekend. Baby Groot was for sure happy to hear the news. The film brought all the wacky humor, retro soundtrack, and a lot of heart to the sequel while also giving us 5 after-credit scenes to laugh and ponder over. Despite how much fun the movie was, though, there is one glaring error that the Guardians themselves couldn't fix. Director James Gunn stated that in order to have Baby Groot in the film, Volume 2 would take place only a few months after the events of the first film. So, it's still 2014 on Earth, in other words. So when Ego the Living Planet decides to rain his destructive powers upon the entire galaxy, including Earth, you'd think an Avenger would have likely shown up to at least investigate the chaos. It would have been a nice moment to have a small cameo from one of our beloved team members. Since the action takes place in 2014, the Avengers are still assembled as Zemo hasn't gotten around to breaking the team apart yet, and Tony Stark hasn't created Ultron. Thankfully, General Ross left out this incident in his report to the Avengers in Civil War. They had enough on their plate and they didn't need any more negativity. Did you see Guardians Volume 2? What did you think of the hit sequel? Well, there you have it. What did you think of our list? Is there any way that digital effects could have rectified some of these mistakes? Would you have even known about them if we didn't bring them up? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to click the subscribe button and get awesome new content from Screen Rant every day. And of course, the answer to our emoji trivia question is... Thanks for playing.